welcome to All Things Odd. My name is Dr. Hannah Galloway.
And I'm Mary Kate.
And we are here today to talk about some new fun things. First, Dr. Phillips is going to show you our YouTube channel. So we're really working for more subscribers here. It's a good way to share our videos with somebody that doesn't have social media, but you can go to YouTube and look up our business, and then you can subscribe. So it'll always let you know when you have a notification for a new episode. And we have really great thumbnail images on YouTube that are not visible elsewhere. So I think it's a little bit more fun. But today we have some really exciting topic. So today we're going to talk about bone conduction. If you have ever come to get a hearing test, and at the end of the hearing test, we put on this little headband, there's a little black box that sits back here. That is bone conduction testing. And you hear through your bones and through the air. So if you've ever been to a concert and you feel like your chest cavity is vibrating with the music, that is hearing through bone conduction. It's just normally not that loud, so you don't feel it quite as much. But in the last, 5-10 years, bone conduction headphones have gotten more popular. So you may see somebody wearing headphones that doesn't actually have anything in their ear, which is kind of odd. And how it works is through bone conduction. So sound transmits through pressure waves and actually makes things move. When we introduce sound back here with the headband or with the bone conduction headphones, it actually sends those vibrations to your temporal bone, which in turn vibrates your cochlea. So you're hearing in kind of a different way. But if you've ever seen somebody wearing headphones like this, you're like, how are they hearing that? It's actually going through the bone. So the picture on the left, we had not heard of. I've never seen anything that looks like that. And honestly, it looks fake. It looks just like a sticker. But it is a bone conduction headphone. And I'm interested to learn more about that set because I feel like we're going to see more and more of those. People want wireless things. They don't want things that go all the way around their head. They want like the least amount of things possible that's visible or that they can feel. So I feel like that would be really awesome for people, but I have not used it or heard any reports on it. So that's probably like the new wave of bone conduction headphones. And so bone conduction, we're going to do it in our office with every hearing test, and we always have, but it's kind of more on the consumer level now that it's available on these headphones. And you can get them literally anywhere, Walmart, Amazon, Best Buy. I mean, there's a lot of places where you can pick these up. I've had some patients tell me that they like it when they're exercising or something because they can hear traffic. They can still be a little bit more aware of what's going on around them while they're listening to their music or their podcast or whatever. You'll notice that on the bone conduction headphones, there's nothing actually plugging up your ear canal. So there's no piece of plastic right here actually plugging up the canal, which makes them very different than other headphones. So I'm going to have you take the next part.
Yeah. So a couple of questions that we hear from a lot of people regarding like bone conduction or like noise exposure, noise-induced hearing loss. And I think you brought up a good point earlier, like when you're at the concert and it feels like your chest is shaking with the music. A lot of people nowadays wear like headphones or earplugs at concerts to kind of help with the noise reduction. I wore them to the Taylor Swift concert and it was very helpful because it was extremely loud there. And so people want to know, can you still get noise exposure from bone conduction if you're wearing like the earplugs or the hearing protection devices? And we found a resource from Audiology online and they answered it in 2005. So I'd be interested to see what updated versions they have with like more of the consumer end of bone conduction headphones. But they basically said that the stuff that goes in your ears, the earplugs or the headphones, can attenuate sound or make it softer by about 40 to 60 decibels, which is pretty loud. I think they usually say that 60 decibels is like an average classroom level. So think of it in that. We have this little noise level decibel chart. And so that kind of breaks it down, what the different things are and like what 40 decibels mean versus 60 decibels. So basically you're still hearing through your bones, but you have those kind of the in the ear earplugs or headphones that are kind of reducing the sound a little bit by the 40 to 60 decibels. So it's still good to kind of have them and wear them when you're in these loud environments, especially at concerts where we know it can physically shake your body.
Yes, and you can't keep the bone conduction. So I was kind of thinking about this. If you were barefoot at a concert, you would feel the bone conduction more than if you're wearing shoes. So I guess you could put on your wool socks and your shoes to try to keep it, because it's coming from the floor. And so there's not really a way to attenuate that other than, I guess, your footwear. But that could prevent maybe a little bit of it from going through. But we had this question earlier this week with a patient because she wears bone conduction headphones, and she wanted to know if that was something that could be giving, that she needed to be cautious of how loud they were. And Mary Kate had the patient, and she was kind of explaining, like, no, with bone conduction, you really, I mean, you're going to be physically uncomfortable if you get it too loud. Shaking your brain is what we were saying, because it literally is vibratory. So when I did an internship at Children's Hospital and we test small children, we use a 2-tester paradigm. So one audiologist sits outside the booth and one sits in the booth. And I was the one sitting in the booth. And the way the audiologist outside the booth would talk to me is through the bone conduction oscillator to let me know what was happening. So I would know when the tone was presented to the child, when the child was supposed to be responding. And I quickly learned that even really, really soft levels seem obtrusively loud through that bone conduction oscillator. So I found that like 35 decibels, which is not very loud, was as much as I could take through the bone oscillator. So it's a very different kind of sound, and it would make you physically, uncomfortable if it got too loud. You can go ahead.
Yeah, we have some patients. So when we do the bone conduction test here in the office, if you have a certain amount of severity of hearing loss, once we go to test the bone portion of it, it gets to the point where I tell the patient, like, okay, you might feel this instead of just hear it. And so then we kind of have to talk. And then, so when they respond, I say, did you hear it or did you feel it? And they're like, I think I kind of felt it. And that's where like the brain shaking comes in, or like it feels like your head is shaking. And so after it gets to that certain point, like you start to feel it rather than you're just hearing things. And so I think that that's a good indicator for like the bone conduction headphones, that it gets to the point where you're going to have a physical response and physical discomfort. And that's how you know to turn it down, versus it getting to the point where it's causing actual noise-induced hearing loss.
So in animal models, or if we just really wanted to study this, yes, you could cause hearing loss by bone conduction. But realistically, you wouldn't to yourself, because you're not going to make it, that loud. But I'm thinking about something environmental. Like I know the Oklahoma City bombing caused so much pressure that people's eardrums ruptured and things. So there's other types of pressure too. So maybe in like some sort of a like sound trauma situation, something with really
like
extreme
racing
pressure.
I'd be interested to know like what the levels are, like the decibels for like F1 races that they're doing nowadays, or like the NASCAR races. Because I feel like that would shake you up too.
Definitely. So to answer the question is, yes, you can get hearing loss from bone conduction at high levels, but you're likely not going to if you're controlling the volume yourself, because it's not going to be comfortable. It would be more of like a noise trauma kind of situation. But there is something that we think is a little bit misleading that we wanted to talk about. So in the Hearing Journal in 2012, Dr. Corey Portnoy, he is here in Colorado, so shout out to Colorado, and Elliot Berger, who's in Indianapolis, they voiced their concerns about a misconception from an article and reference to a bone conduction headset. So the description of the bone conduction headphones alluded that it may be safe to use because the headphones do not use the eardrums to transmit sound. They allow users to listen to music without risk of eardrum damage. So that statement in itself is true, because it doesn't go through your eardrum, but eardrum damage is not usually what we're concerned about with high sound levels. So it's just kind of a misleading statement, because it makes you think that no matter what you do, you can't have damage from bone conduction hearing aids or bone conduction devices, which is not true. And so we did want to point that out, because it's not that they're just inherently safe all the time, no matter what you do. They're going to be a little bit safer than non-bone conduction, because you don't have to have the sound as loud to hear it as well. But we did want to point that out, because they could be advertised to mislead you and think that it's safer. But you're not going to have it quite as loud, but it can still cause damage if you were to have it as loud for as long. And the other thing we wanted to talk about is dentists and drilling. So that's an area too where you're getting, noise exposure. And I was telling Dr. Phillips and Mary Kate that every time I go to the dentist, I feel like they find out I'm an audiologist and they have questions about the drills or if they should be, having hearing protection or things like that. And that is actually somewhere where those scalers and some of those hand tools that they use can get really, really loud. And so what we were talking about earlier is not only the dentist wearing earplugs, but the hygienist, because a lot of times the hygienist is going to be using those hand tools or scalers for longer, having more patient contact time probably with each patient. They actually spend more time cleaning your teeth with those tools. So that's something that when you're the patient, you're actually getting that sound through bone conduction. So if you're sitting there in the dental chair with your mouth open and you're like, oh gosh, that is so loud. It sounds louder because the sound is actually being transmitted through your tooth, which is a bone. So that's just big nerd information for you of how you have heard through bone conduction before. But of course, when the dentist or anybody else is using the tools, it's not really through bone conduction. It's just through the air conduction that they're getting the sound. But the patient themselves actually can hear through bone conduction while you're getting your teeth worked on, or even using an electric toothbrush. It sounds so loud in your mouth. And if you're standing next to the person brushing their teeth, it's not loud at all, but it just sounds super loud because it's like you're hearing through your teeth, which is pretty cool.
I think the electric toothbrush is a good example. I have a friend who has one, and she has a roommate, and the roommate says it's her alarm clock because every morning that's what she wakes up to is the sound of the electric toothbrush. And so when I was home for Thanksgiving, she was brushing her teeth, and I pulled out my sound level meter, and it was like 62 decibels at my ear level. And we were like across the room. I was like, girl,
what kind of toothbrush was it?
It's like one of the Philips Sonicare ones, but that's what I have. And mine's not that loud. I was like, maybe you just got like a faulty battery.
Hers is malfunctioning.
Yeah, it's so loud. But like, that's a great point. Like, it depends, like, how long are you using that? How much is it? Like, how much is the bone conduction going through her head and to her ear through it? Because I only tested it on mine through air. Right. But yeah, that's a very interesting point with the toothbrushes. They made that clip toothbrush that I think was supposed to be like the best, quietest option.
I bought that for my husband. He does like it. I bought it for him because it uses disposable batteries, so you don't have to like charge it every night and just like being on the go and stuff. He's never had an electric toothbrush. I was trying to like ease him into it with like the most user-friendly version. And he did like it, but I've used like an Oral-B one for a long time, so he didn't really have a comparison to another electric toothbrush. But yeah, that's someplace where you have heard through bone conduction. You're like, wow, that sounds so loud when I'm brushing my own teeth. But really to everybody else, it's not like that.
Unless you're my friend with her faulty toothbrush.
Yes, exactly. But that also brings up another good point about just like consumer electronics and how loud they are. It's something that probably 10 years ago was not even available on the packaging of things, but now I've started to see it on things. So I bought a new microwave and a new oven, and I used the microwave for the first time, and it is the loudest microwave I have ever heard. It is like 70 decibels.
Oh my God.
When it's running. And it's not like it's on high. That's just how loud it is. And I will never buy another appliance for my home without checking the dB level of the signals. And I know that sounds like an ultra nerd thing to say. But even my husband, he's like, is that the new microwave? And it's like a new LG, I just bought it because it matched the fridge and the oven that I had just bought. Well, next time I will be looking. Same for dishwashers. And if you've ever gone over to somebody's house, you're like, oh my gosh, usually the newer ones are a lot quieter. But now that you're familiar with sound levels and our little noise thermometer, now you too can check out the level of the appliances or the things that you're using around the house to see if they're dangerous.
A fun little scavenger hunt. See how loud everything is.
Yes, definitely. Blow dryers will be so loud that it's shocking. In graduate school, I took a class and they had us, measure things like that. My garage door, whenever you open it, is over 100 dB. And I think that's because of the reverberation from being in the garage, that there's nowhere to absorb the sound. But yeah, there's all kinds of things that are day-to-day sounds we don't really think about. But your garage door, you only hear it open for 5 seconds and then it's done. It's not like you're listening to it for 2 hours. So if anybody has any questions about this topic, ideas for a new topic, send it our way. We have been trying to come in on Thursdays as much as we can to have live shows. Another idea for you guys is to download a sound level meter on your phone. I have an iPhone, and the one I use is called Decibel 10 with like the Roman numeral 10. It's an X. That's the one I use, and I found it to be pretty reliable. I've compared it to an actual sound level meter before when I was in graduate school. It has like a little indicator, and part of it's green and part of it's red. So you know that if it's in the red, it's instantly dangerous. For no amount of time can you listen to that and be safe. If it's in the green, it doesn't mean that it's always safe. If you listen to something in the green for like 9 hours, that could be unsafe, but it still will give you a pretty good gauge, especially for outdoor concerts and things. I'll see people at outdoor concerts that are not loud enough to warrant hearing protection, and they're like wrangling their kids to get the earphones on them and stuff. And sometimes it really isn't loud enough to warrant it if it's outdoors and it's not that loud of a show. So it is nice to have that tool in your pocket so you can kind of look at it and see, is this, a safe listening level or not?
I have the Decibel, I call it Decibel X. I didn't realize it was a 10.
Oh.
So I have the Decibel.
I think it used to be 9 or something.
Oh, okay.
I know this.
I also have the NIOSH sound level meter. And so NIOSH is one of like the two. There's NIOSH and OSHA, which both have like noise exposure limits. And so that's where we get like our information as to how loud and how long you can listen through something, because it's time weighted. So the louder it is, the less time you can listen to it. And so NIOSH actually came out with an app. They have their own sound level meter. And so if anyone wants like a more technical engineering type end of it, I think that one's a good option too.
Or as like a double check, you know, just to kind of see how accurate. That's how I originally started trusting the Decibel app, was I used an actual sound level meter and compared the readings, and they were pretty solid. So
yeah, but it's interesting. It's crazy the things that you like encounter in your everyday life with the noise exposure that we just don't even think about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're very used to living in noisy worlds these days. So if you have any questions for us on bone conduction, new ideas for topics, please send them our way. And we will be back next Thursday on an all new episode of All Things Odd. Thank you.